Remember, remember the 5th of November, a gunpowder, treason and plot. I see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. Guy Fawkes, 'twas his intent to blow up the king and parliament, 70 barrels of powder below, poor old England to overthrow. By God's providence he was catched, with a dark lantern and a burning match. Holla boys, let the bells ring. Holla boys, God save the king. Bonfire Night, an annual event in Britain sprung around because of events that occurred on the 5th of November 1605. History has told the story of the Gunpowder Plot, and Guy Fawkes has emerged as a legend for his part. The conspiracy to blow up Parliament and the King James I by English Roman Catholics, who, led by Robert Catesby, were angered by the King's refusal to grant more religious tolerance to Roman Catholics. The plot was, as I've stated, led by Robert Catesby, with his 4 co-conspirators, Thomas Winter, Thomas Percy, John Wright and Guy Fawkes. It's believed that the 5 thought that by killing the king and blowing up Parliament, there would be a mass confusion, and as such an opportunity would have arisen to allow the English Catholics to take over the country. Back in the May of 1603, Catesby was bringing around the birth of the plot. He wanted to find a way that was sure to kill the king, and it was then, on November 1st, 1603, that Catesby wrote to his cousin Robert Winter. At first he refused his summons. However, a second urgent summons was sent, and he obliged. This is thought to have been in the January of 1604, and Winter and John Wright were then included in the plot. Now, before they decided to act out the plot, they thought they would try a quiet way to obtain a positive result and appeal the penal laws. There was a body of laws which criminalised Catholicism. Winter was then sent to Flanders to enlist the aid of Juan de Velasco, the Duke of Friars and the Constable of Castile, who was also conducting negotiations between England and Spain for peace. It was here that Winters met Fawkes. He had achieved only empty promises in Flanders, but he returned with Fawkes, a man who was devoted to the Roman Catholic cause and known for undertaking perilous adventure. On their return to England, and now joined by Percy, all 5 met in a house just behind St. Clement's Church. An oath of secrecy was sworn by all, and as stated by Fawkes, they all took communion in an adjoining apartment with Father John Gerard. Later, several other persons were included in the plot, including Winter's brother Thomas, John Grant, Ambrose Wokewood, Robert Keyes, Sir Everard Digby, Catesby's cousin Francis Tresham, and Catesby's servant Thomas Bates. On the 24th of May 1604, a house adjoining the House of Lords was then hired in Percy's name. This house is actually quite important. You see, the plan was to dig a mine from the cellar of the house, and on December 11th, 1604, the digging began. In the March, they had gotten around halfway through the wall, and it was discovered that the vault under the House of Lords was available. So Percy hired this, and then 36 barrels of gunpowder, which was then covered and concealed by coal and firewood, was moved in. Guy Fawkes was sent to Flanders, where he disclosed to a Welsh Roman Catholic called Hugh Owen, and he was a Roman Catholic whose intrigue in England dated back to Queen Elizabeth I and the Rodolphi plot. Sir Edmund Bainham was then sent on a mission to Rome to be on hand when the news of the plot's success came, so that he could win over the Pope to the cause. A hunting match was then organised, and this was set to be in Warwickshire, and it was thought that a large number of the Roman Catholic gentry were invited. You see, if the plot was successful, then it was believed that they would join the cause. The plan was then for the plotters to take Princess Elizabeth, Percy would seize the infant Prince Charles, and Fawkes was then to take sail to Flanders and collect support. They all believed that if the government was terrorised and helpless, that they would then agree to their demands. The secret at this point was still well kept. All the preparations had been made and no setbacks had been encountered, but as the time approached, those who had never committed an offence felt the feeling of guilt fall upon them, and they realised that among those who were to be assassinated were many Roman Catholics and friends or kin. But Catesby rejected the idea of allowing anyone to be warned. Lord Monteagle, a brother-in-law of Tresham, had ties to some of the other conspirators, and he engaged in a previous Roman Catholic plot against the government. He had, however, given his support to the new king, and on October 26th he received an anonymous letter delivered by an unknown messenger, which read, "My lord, out of the love I bear to some of your friends, I have a care of your preservation. Therefore I would advise you, as the tender your life, to devise some excuse to shift your attendance at this Parliament. For God and man have concurred to punish the wickedness of this time, and think not slightly of this advertisement, but retire yourself into the country, where you may expect the event in safety. For though there be no appearance of any stir, yet I say they shall receive a terrible blow this Parliament, and yet they shall not see who hurts them. This council is not to be condemned because it may do you good and can do you no harm, for the danger is past as soon as you have burnt the letter, and I hope God will give you the grace to make good use of it, to whose holy protection I commend you." Although the author of this letter has never been disclosed, all the evidence points towards Tresham, and that he probably warned Montage and agreed with him on how to best make known the plot and avoid its execution, and at the same time giving the conspirators time to escape. The letter was presented at Whitehall, and a decision was made to search the cellar, but a decision was also made not to search so soon that the plot may be ripe and fully disclosed. On October 27th, Thomas Ward, Monteagle's servant and a friend of Thomas Winter, informed Winter that the plot was known, and the following day Winter informed Catesby and begged him to give up the whole project. Catesby learned from Fawkes that nothing had been touched in the cellar, and hoping that the government had put no credence into Monteagle's letter, Catesby determined to stand firm. Fawkes then returned to the cellar to keep guard as before. So then, on November 4th, the king was shown the letter, and he ordered Thomas Howard, the first Earl of Suffolk, to examine the buildings. He was accompanied by Monteagle, and they arrived at the cellar, and Fawkes opened the door, exposing a very large pile of firewood. The owner was asked, and the name Percy was given, and this aroused suspicion, so a further search was ordered, and this was taken on by Thomas Kivett, a Westminster magistrate. The gunpowder was then discovered, and Fawkes was arrested. Fawkes was then tortured, and it was only under torture that he gave the names of the other co-conspirators, along with the extent of their involvement. You see, when Fawkes was arrested, the others fled, apart from Tresham, and they rejoined each other in Warwickshire. Here they discussed next steps and pushed on in the direction of Wales. Catesby's party arrived at 2 p.m. in Haddington on November 6th. The following morning, the band, numbering around 36 persons, then confessed and heard Mass, and then rode away to Holbeach House in Staffordshire, arriving at around 10 p.m. on November 7th. En route, they'd broken into Lord Windsor's house at Hewell Grange and taken all the arms and munitions that they found there. You see, their case was now desperate. "Not one came to take our part," said Digby, "though we had expected so many. They were being followed by the sheriff and all the forces of the country, and their options had all but vanished. One by one their followers fled from the house in which the last scene was then to be played out." It was then that by some of the remaining gunpowder a large explosion occurred on November 8th, and the remaining conspirators were shook with terror and fear, and they felt it was a judgment from heaven. This undermined their assurances of innocence, and they no longer felt their cause to be just. The severity of it all now became obvious, and at 11 a.m. The sheriff arrived at the house and began firing upon them. Catesby, Percy and Wright were killed. Winter and Rokewood were wounded and taken prisoner with the men who had remained with them. In all, 8 conspirators, including the 2 Winters, Digby, Fawkes, Rokewood, Keyes and Bates, were all executed, whilst Tresham died in the Tower of London. Of the priests involved, Garnet was tried and executed, while Greenway and Gerard escaped to the continent. Now it is interesting because these men were so devoted and felt their cause to be just, and they wholeheartedly believed that they could bring about change. Well, they did, just the wrong kind. They risked it all to try and improve life for Roman Catholics, and instead they only made the rules harsher and set back religious tolerance for centuries. Laws were increased in severity against Roman Catholics, and Protestants' suspicions were intensified. January 1606 then saw the introduction of an annual day of public thanksgiving, to be held every November 5th, and to be called Guy Fawkes Day. Remember, remember, the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason and plot. I see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. Thank you for watching, and to support, please subscribe to Her Remarkable History. Thank you.